the TFL Podcast again. Back episode, what is this? Episode like 23?
No.
13. It's actually, this episode number 13 is actually a good number for this group of guys because a lot of luck in this group, a lot of luck. And we had a lot of luck together. So I remember these two as very fondly as either younger brothers or a father to their, no. Anyway, I love them like brothers. And we've been through a lot of wars together. So I greatly appreciate having my friend John Gallant, who is now the current assistant coach of the University of Denver Pioneers lacrosse team with Coach Bill Tierney and Coach Matt Brown. And Johnny, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Johnny, longtime player for the Colorado Mammoth, going back even to the Washington Power. Our other friend that joins us, Brian Langtry, who probably needs very little introduction, but an illustrious player in his own right, and name retired into the rafters at Pepsi Center. Brian Langtry from the Colorado Mammoth and Johnny Gallant from the Colorado Mammoth, longtime players there. Thrilled to have you guys. A little plug for Brian Langtry's 6-star lacrosse, who's running in Denver, and he's got 9 teams now, Brian, running a bunch of lacrosse for young kids learning how to play the game?
Yeah, I've got 9 teams. I train about 50 to 75 kids each week, pretty much all day long in the summer, and then training kids throughout the year after school and on weekends. So yeah, we've grown from 2 teams to 9 teams in 1 year, so it's been pretty great.
So it took us a while to get started this morning, probably mostly because Johnny Gallant was trying to get on a Zoom call on his flip phone, which is not the easiest thing to do. Holding it up and trying to get the light to work, and through the cracks, I'm sure, of how this works. Johnny, not the most tech-savvy guy, so I'm glad you got on. I'm excited that you were able to figure it out.
Well, I appreciate it, and I know I appreciate taking the blunt of the blame here for an issue that you started by sending it to the wrong place. But it's
the brunt. You mean the brunt? I think he means the brunt.
Yeah,
the blunt.
All right.
Sure.
Cool.
It's the brunt of it, and that's okay. Brian and I are used to that, and so
that is from a lot of blunt force trauma to his head, is what that's from.
Hey, it's from a lot of things. I'll tell you that. It's from a lot of things. But yes, I finally got it on, and we're working. So I'm not going to touch anything because I don't want to screw it up. And so we're rolling. So that's good.
Good. Well, Brian, I'm excited to have you. You and I haven't talked in a while, but I just want, as we started most of our road trips with the old Colorado Mammoth when I was a GM there, and most of our road trips started with this question that I asked Brian at the airport before we left. Are you going to behave today?
Am I going to behave? Oh, yeah. I'm a little bit of a different man these days. I don't know if you know that, but yeah.
No, I have no idea.
Yeah, nobody does. The only thing I do is work with kids, but I don't have any adult friends, so I don't really, besides guys I work with. So I kind of just hole up here with my dog right there in the background, just hang out. Yeah, I'm good, man.
I think we could probably go back in history and say that you never really had any adult friends.
Wow, that hurts, man. That hurts.
Fellas, let's get into this because I want to find out, you guys came to the National Lacrosse League in kind of 2 completely different ways and from 2 completely different backgrounds. And so I just want to get into this every week with my guests that come on the TFL podcast, and these 2 guys are definitely TFLers. But Brian, how did you get started in the game?
Well, I'm a New Yorker, I'm a Long Island guy, so I grew up in a place where box lacrosse. They had the Saints when I was growing up. We used to go to games, and it was pretty packed. I thought it was really cool, and then it kind of died off a little bit. I didn't even really think about pro lacrosse at all. And then I got drafted by the Saints. I think I was in like the 7th round or something, made the practice squad. That was all kind of a haze. It was the guys we were playing with were American guys. It wasn't really learning the box game all that much. They were great players, but they didn't really spend too much time teaching me how to play. So I kind of sucked. So I played 2 games with the Saints. Are you asking how I got into box lacrosse or lacrosse?
Well, my question was really who put the stick in your hand for the first time. So.
Oh, my dad did. My dad put a lacrosse stick in my hand when I was a little kid. I thought I was going to be a quarterback. I thought I was definitely destined for some football greatness, but I got these little bitch hands, so I couldn't grab the football anymore. My dad put the stick in, and I started playing lax. And
you're great with the Nerf ball, though. You're great with the Nerf ball.
Oh, I can throw a pretty tight spiral. Not gonna lie, I'll throw a pigskin over the mountains.
Johnny, talk about your journey. Who put the stick in your hand for the first time?
Hey, it was, I grew up in Brantford, Ontario, and for those who don't know, it's the home of Wayne Gretzky, and so just as a Canadian town, and growing up when Gretzky was still playing, I was a hockey player, and it was Gaylord Powless, who was from Six Nations, Ontario, which is a neighboring city, and his family was very close with my father, and they kind of had a relationship, and so I kind of got into lacrosse late in middle school, and was playing baseball and didn't enjoy it in the summer, and so I just kind of grew up right in the right time where I had connections with people who the game was important to them, and I grew up right at the same time where the Six Nation Arrows were very successful, at the junior A level in Ontario. And so, I was surrounded by people and had access to watching high quality lacrosse. And that's how, I got into it. And so was looking for that sport to play in the summer to go with hockey in that rotation, and just, fell into, a really good situation to where could see it in performed at a high level and had people around me who could teach me how to play.
So, you're aware that this is only an hour show, right?
Yeah, he just keeps talking, this freaking guy. It's never
you are aware we only have an hour.
I'm watching the time click down, and my answer was shorter than Brian's on that one. I see the time on my screen.
What do you got, an egg timer there or something?
What a dork.
Hey, Johnny, tell the story, and please tell it short.
Yes.
Tell the story about how you got signed to play for the Colorado Mammoth. Washington Power.
Washington Power, yeah. So, I was playing Six Nation Chiefs, and I was coached by Darius Kilgore, who was the head coach of the Washington Power. And, I was deciding grad school or, I was looking at going to grad school, and Darius called me up and said, "Hey, do you have any interest in playing professional lacrosse?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Can you meet me? We're traveling." It was yourself, Darius Kilgore, and Dave Huntley. He said, "Hey, can you meet us in Brooklyn? We were there to watch the Redmond and Excelsiors play." And so I drove the hour and a half.
Brooklyn, Ontario, right?
Brooklyn, Ontario. Yeah, sorry, Brooklyn, Ontario. And so I drove the hour and a half north of Toronto and met you guys, for the first time, Dave Huntley and yourself, and left the arena and went out to your rent-a-van, your rent-a-car, which was a minivan, and signed a contract. And, drove myself home and told my mother, I'm not going to go to grad school. Right now, it's I'm going to drive out to Baltimore and try out for the Washington Power. And so that's how it started in the parking lot of whatever that arena is in Brooklyn, Ontario.
Iroquois Park, I think they call it Iroquois Park.
Iroquois Park.
You signed the contract. I will never forget this. Signed the contract on the hood.
That's right.
Of the rental car with Tom Still, wasn't it? Tom Still was there.
The classic blocker.
Classic blocker. Old school blocker. Yeah.
Old school blocker.
And yep. And it was not long after that, we were in Towson, Maryland, and in a one bedroom apartment and with Devin DeLeap, and we were beginning our professional lacrosse careers.
I do remember signing two guys that year, and Brian, you'll get a kick out of this. Gallant and Standish. Standish, Gallant. Like how?
I don't know who that is.
Well, I mean, it's very old school British.
Miles Standish.
Miles Standish and Gallant, like these guys were like knights of the Round Table.
Right. Yeah. Excellent.
Something like that.
So, but it was you're the hood of your rental van with Dave Huntley and we kind of sat, those arenas, right? It was a Iroquois Park Arena. They got little beer gardens and stuff there, right? And you can go have a beer there during the intermission, and that's where I originally met you. And same thing. Asked you probably a million questions and missed a period or two, right? And, and there it is.
Ryan,
journey begins.
Yeah. I get to talk.
Tell me. Yeah, you get to talk. Your first kind of entry into the Colorado Mammoth and making your way onto that team was a bit of a roundabout process, because I do remember you called me or you tried to get in touch with me or something, and I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't know who the fuck you are. Just come to tryouts. And I'm like, whatever. And I didn't realize that you played for
Barrage.
For the Saints, and I didn't know that and so we had a tryout, right?
Rookie of the year after playing that. The league didn't know you played for the Saints either.
Nobody did.
Yeah, rookie of the
That's
year.
why you won Rookie of the Year. You're the only two-time Rookie of the Year in the National Lacrosse League.
And in all honesty, I might not have played for the Saints. I could be wrong. I don't. That's all. A lot of that stuff, it's all kind of hazy. But I will say this, Steve, and I'm not going to get all corny on you, but the Colorado Mammoth was the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life, besides my kids. I guess I got to say that. But, I mean, it's definitely a tight one. But, when I went to that tryout, I called you, and your email was something like Manimal43.
No, that's not true.
It was like Lady Killer Manimal.
No, that's not true.
Like, what kind of GM has that email? This guy's garbage. So then I heard a little bit about you. I'm like, he's real badass, cool. So I got in touch with you. I busted your ass to get on there because I was living in Colorado. I told everyone out here I was a lacrosse player. And then the Mammoth are coming. I'm like, oh, crap. Like, I'm not going to be on the team. Everyone's going to make fun of me. So I got into sick shape before that. Like, I was out running a hill. Like, I wasn't a huge exercise guy, but I could train my mind for like a month to go as hard as anybody. So I would run up a hill every day for like an hour, get in great shape. I came to tryouts. I was like, I'm making this damn team. So I came out against, luckily you invited anybody who wanted to come to the tryout. So I was going against, a lot of the guys there. They're great guys. So,
let me just put in perspective a couple names of guys who were at that tryout. Jamie Monroe, Eric,
they're older.
Tom Ethington. We're all
Tom and I were good ones. The rest of them were a little older. The other two were great players, but they were older.
Not great. Not great.
Whatever. I got to be nice, right? But anyway, so getting onto that team was like mission critical for me, right? Because I wanted to be. I needed to have something out here. I moved out here I'm a Long Island guy living in Colorado. It was like I was like going out, like getting into arguments and fights with people because that's what we did growing up. And out here, it's like, whoa, this guy's really abrasive. So we got. So when I showed up to try out for the team, I was like, man, this is awesome. And you wanted to cut me. From what I heard, the story goes like this: you wanted to cut me, but Ward Sanderson and George McGeaney said, nah, give him a shot or something like that. That's the story I heard.
It's entirely possible. I don't remember much.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I would have cut me too. In all honesty, for like the first 4 years on the Mammoth, I felt like a guy who like went to visit Hollywood and like snuck on the stage and like they let him become an actor. And after a while, they're like, he can act a little bit. Let's leave him around. Like I never felt like I really belonged there. And my whole career, I kind of felt like, damn, I'm a little bit out of my league.
Well, that's probably why you're so great, is you didn't feel like you belonged, so you had to keep trying to prove it to everybody, which, ultimately probably makes for great players. But, Johnny, you walked into that locker room in a different way, right? That was a time when, you were coming from Washington. We had gone to the semifinals, against Toronto, and we were really a whisker away from going to the finals and winning. And it was a great team with Gary and Paul and a lot of American talent, Brian Reese and Hugh Donovan and Paul Canabine, and the list goes on and on of really Kip Folks, Josh Sims, quality players. And my job, for those people probably don't remember this, but my job as part of the sale from Washington to Denver is I had to sign a certain number of those guys to make sure that we kept the integrity of that roster. And so you were one of those guys, and we signed, I think, 12 guys off that roster and went out and played, the first time in Denver, but we had to supplement. That's how Brian, we did an open tryout for the rest of the roster and signed some free agents and did okay. But, talk about your kind of journey through that. Okay, Mom, now I'm not going to grad school. I'm leaving Washington. I'm going to move to Denver.
Yeah, it was, even that last year in Washington, there was no one there, right? And we knew that last year in Washington that, we weren't coming back. And so, there was a lot of uncertainty of where we're going. Are we still going to be together? Are we moving cities? What's going on? And kind of the last second we end up in Colorado, and we get here, right? And the first time we played, we had an exhibition game after a hockey game, right? And I think we played Philly or somebody like that, but we had an exhibition game after an NHL hockey game. And so it's, like 10:30 at night, whenever it is. And, walking out, you said to me, hey, don't be shocked. There's actually people here. And, that was a tremendous difference from our days, at the Cap Center where, it was like, we just hope the arena's open when you get there.
Yeah, you could shoot a gun in that place and you probably wouldn't have hit anybody.
Right? And so you could hear, you hear the people talking. And so, the first experience out here is, you're right, we lost in overtime, right? Double overtime the year before, to Toronto. And, there's uncertainty of where we're going to be. And we ended up here, and it was a great experience right away, in that first exhibition game with actually having fans. And then, the first game against Toronto, right, when, Brian scores the overtime winner, I think that kind of, that kicked it all off, right? And so to where. Well,
Brian, do you remember that preseason game we played? It was a Montreal Canadiens.
Absolutely.
Game. And we play. It was like 11:30. We called it Midnight Madness, but we weren't allowed to. And we put the turf down, and we played Philly. And I actually remember Jake tore his ACL in that game.
Yep.
By the way, we'll tease next guest on the TFL podcast, Tommy Marichek and Jake Berge, come back and see us.
Awesome.
How much were the beers that day after the game? What were you selling? How much were the beers and hot dogs?
We sold beer for $2, and we sold hot dogs for $1. And 12,500 people stayed until 1 a.m. to watch that game. And I went
4-2. I went 4-2 that game, just to remind you.
Oh, gee. This is a guy that says he doesn't remember anything from back there, but he remembers every bit of his stats.
I remember stats. Hell yeah.
Cali BBQ is proud to be an official sponsor of your San Diego Seals. Buy our slow smoked barbecue at any Seals home game or online anytime at www.calibbq.media.
Did you guys ever remember like tension between Americans and Canadians? And obviously, we had a lot of Americans in that locker room and Canadians, and we're bringing it together. And I do remember Dave Stilley saying at one point that it was just a recipe for disaster, but it worked. And do you guys remember a tension?
I'll take this one. I remember tension with every single Canadian who wasn't on my team. I think every single guy from Canada wanted to kill me. But our team was, for some reason, everybody got along. And, it was just, like you said, it was just an awesome mix of guys in that locker room. And everybody, there were a couple guys that like Hanford and Jalbert that really were able to kind of bridge that gap, I think, and really kind of like their personalities were just really lovable, I think, and everybody just enjoyed them. And Stilly, and then, and they had experience playing in Philly and with all those other Canadian guys, and that kind of, made it easier for guys like myself and a couple of the other Americans, I think. But no, there was zero tension between us on that team.
I would say to you, like the guys we had that first year, and then, you supplement some guys in the second year, Carlson and that come the second year and things like that. But the Canadian guys that we had, you had Gary Gait, right? And so, he's fantastic and you respect him. But a lot of the Canadian guys we had were, your blue collar type guys like myself. I wasn't drafted, right? And so, I think you had guys who had personalities to begin with who were easy to get along with, right? And didn't look down at the American guys of, not having experience in the style of play that we have. And, I totally agree with Brian, right? Like a lot of the American guys we had, you get into any room with them, right? Their energy and their enthusiasm and their personality fills the room, and it's easy, right, to get along with. So I think it's a combination of that and a combination of the Canadian guys we had were blue collar guys that were, Fred Jenners that are just, hey, I'll respect you, you respect me, we're going to, go out there and battle each other, battle opponents, and have a good time after, right? And
I'd like to add to that, Johnny. I think Canadian players in general, I actually really enjoy the Canadian player because of the blue collar. I think across the country, Canadian players are blue collar guys, a little bit like Long Island guys, and that's why I kind of fit in with the guys on my team. Now I know there was a sense of Canadian guys that look down on American players, and rightly so. Most of us suck, right? I mean, most American guys are just not good at box. If you want to be honest about it, it's a different sport. It's not fair, right? Totally different.
Yep.
So I think, but for the most part, I loved it. And I'm a big hockey fan over here, so I like the grittiness. I like the toughness. Like these days, like at the outdoor leagues, they're like trading jerseys after games and stuff. Like if I'm playing against somebody. Like I like the Canadians. I want that. Like I hate them. The guys on
we
the
aren't trading jerseys.
No,
they're not trading jerseys.
Yeah, but like you got to demonize the other team to play as hard as you can, I think.
Right.
So that team, obviously, Gary was there when we first moved there, and and G Nash, Nick Carlson, Gavin Prout come along, Jalbert, Hanford come along, and then there was. The wave of Pat Coyle, Chris Gill, Rich Catton, Danny Stroop. There was like the way that team came together was kind of, obviously, and we'll talk about 2006 in a minute and how that came together, but we were a pretty competitive group out in the Rockies that was able to kind of, compete right away and be, in the mix a lot of times. And we had a lot of guys, some guys living in Denver. The original template, I think, in the National Lacrosse League for some guys living in Denver, some guys traveling from the West Coast, some guys traveling from the East Coast, some guys traveling from Toronto. And we had a lot of kind of moving pieces that ultimately came together in a pretty big way. But talk about the first game, January 3rd, 2003 against the Toronto Rock, and what that game means to you guys as a legacy for the sport in Colorado, but ultimately – what it meant to you in the time frame, right then and there in that time frame, what it was like running out of that tunnel for the first time.
I think for me, right, it's, we lost to them the year before in double overtime, right? And they come in and, you want to put on a good show for your fans, for the development of lacrosse outside of the East Coast, right, and moving west and development of the National Lacrosse League. But, to me, right off the bat, Brian just said it. I hated him, right? And I didn't like Veltman, and I didn't like Coyle. I didn't like Colin Doyle. I see him in the summertime, right? Like, I'm going to stick him, right? I want to stick you, right? And I'm going to hurt you, right? And they're the same, to us. And, you know, I think it's, you know, for me, it was, a lot of it was, you know, the sour taste of losing the year before. And now you got them here, you know, in our arena. And you get off to a good start and with a good group of guys. And there's the stress, you know, there is definitely the stress of development of the team as it's moving west, and the league as it's moving west. And we're kind of that first franchise that has ownership that is known, and it's a little outside that box. And so it was us against them. And, you know, that's the way I looked at it. And, you know, the energy from the getting the box and all that sort of stuff that brought to it. It brought a new style of how the game was played. And I really enjoyed that.
Brian, your goal in that overtime launched a franchise. And I say that a lot, that moment could be pinpointed to, and I remember the shot. I remember it like it went over his left shoulder, and it was just a rising sub shot that went over his shoulder, and it literally launched a franchise. And there was a lot of things that happened before that game. We had to push the game back because the lineup was down to the Conoco station, and there was a lot of things kind of going on around that you guys weren't aware of. But ultimately, 16,500 people come into that building that day, and that goal. What do you remember about that event, that moment?
Oh my God! See, I mean, what does that game mean to me? It means everything. I mean, it was pretty much defined how my life would move forward in a lot of different ways, for good and bad, to be honest. Before that time, I didn't really know what the hell I wanted to do. I knew I liked lacrosse, this and that. But I mean, look, man, I get hooked on things. I was hooked on lacrosse right after that. I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want these people cheer. Yes, as corny as it sounds, or as surface area as I wanted people cheering for me. I wanted people telling me how good I was. That was the best feeling on earth. And like, I'm playing for the Saints. No one was at the games, but here it was like, holy crap, these people think I'm like cool. And you know, I don't even think I was supposed to be on the floor. I just ran out. It was power play, and I definitely wasn't on the power play at that point. I was like, I'm going, and I just hopped the boards and went in. You know, when the ball went through, I got to tell you, man, like I'm getting chills even thinking about it right now. It was pretty much the most defining moment in my professional career. And like from that point on, everything was just, I need to stay on this team.
You had a number of moments, and I know Johnny had a number of moments since then, but Johnny, I got a question for you. How many nicknames did Brian make up for himself throughout his career?
You know, listen, I went from Josh Sims, right, as you know, my roommate to Brian Langtry, right? I went from one end to the other, right? And, you know, and I love him to death. And, you know, so how many, it's endless, right? It's endless. And it's
so many.
Blaze.
And there's
Blaze. Remember the day he had Blaze, and it was just, he came up with this random nickname, and he scored a goal, and his eyes are as big as saucers, and he's yelling at the other bench going, Blaze is heating up.
And so that's what it is. It's not just the nicknames. It's referring to himself in the third person, right? And that's the piece. And it's talking to him, right? Like the best was the way he spoke to the opponents, right? And the way he talked to them, right? You know, during the course of the game. And it was something that you go to the Canadian guys, we had never seen before and never experienced before. And, you know, but yeah, it was from shattered glass to six to blade. Yes, it's endless.
Shattered glass. I don't even think I've heard that one.
That's actually in the works right now. That's my autobiography. It's going to be a blowout. It's going to be unreal.
One of my favorite memories was watching Pat Coyle and Brian talk in the locker room.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, God. So listen,
oil and water.
I say this to, you know, to people around, you know, they ask, and we obviously live in the same community, right? Brian is one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. And you know, he's helped me in so many ways. And it was for us, right? He has an O guy, and then there's the D guys. And to watch Pat Coyle, just to watch his face get so frustrated and angry at Brian, and they would have these discussions. And Brian is so intelligent, you know, light years beyond me, obviously, and he just knew how to get to Pat Coyle.
Pat Coyle also, just to make reference, Pat Coyle, extremely well-read,
He's
extremely intelligent.
Brilliant.
Yes.
And these conversations were at the highest level of intelligence.
Yes.
And Brian would fuck with him so hard. It was the best.
And then
I didn't even really believe half the things I said to him. I just wanted to piss him off. But
so then you had guys like, you had guys like Hanford, and you had guys like Jalbert would just then start needling Pat Coyle too, right? And going, hey, you can't let him get away with that. What is he talking about? And
Jamie Hanford, not the most well-read and not the smartest guy in the room.
Burger.
But those are, you know, yes, it's, you know, so those are the things, right? Like those are the stories that stay amongst the team always, but it was priceless watching this battle go on buses, in restaurants, in the terminals, right? And, you know, Brian is a million miles an hour, right, all the time, right? And he would get Pat going, and you just sit back, and no one knew what the heck any of them were talking about, but we just knew one guy was getting really frustrated.
One of my favorite moments, and it wasn't favorite at the time, but I don't know where we were flying from, but we were coming back in the morning, and Brian had gone probably a little bit too far all night long and was getting on the plane.
No.
And he suggested he was going to try and kill me with a pen.
I said shank.
Shank me. And I finally said to him, and it's the whole airplane is listening to this conversation. We're like 5 rows away from each other. And he's going, I'm going to shank you. I'm going to shank you. And I finally stood up in front of the whole plane and said, will you shut the fuck up? I'm just come up here and try it. And then he fell asleep.
So so it's, you know, Brian and I, like, you know, roommates. I brought him.
Tread lightly, John.
Yes.
I haven't had, for the record, I haven't touched a sip of alcohol in 3 years, so I don't want to hear it. Tread very lightly, John.
Right. But the best, you know, how it would work, right, is Brian would, you know, we had one rule, right, is you can't wear your suit right on the plane from the night before. Yeah, you know, we did that all the time. And so, you know, it was Brian would put, you know, his clothes right in a bag and put them in.
Hey, one second. Can I just clarify the rule? The rule was you couldn't wear the clothes from the night before onto the plane. And most guys were in suits, and I didn't want guys like were up all night, looked like freaking derelicts, and getting onto the plane and wearing the same shit they wore the night before.
Yeah, good rule.
Good rule.
I think so.
Good rule.
Common sense. You know, you know what? It's the way it would go was.
What were you saying, Johnny? I had throw my stuff in a bag. Of course, isn't that what you do? Everyone has a bag.
It was a plastic garbage bag.
Plastic garbage.
So what? It's a bag. Bag's a bag.
A bag's a bag.
Bag's a bag. So
and then by the way, he wouldn't take the suit out of the bag for the week.
That's right.
Right? Out of the plastic bag. It would sit in there for the week after he went all night, and he'd wear the suit to the next game.
Hey,
so what?
If you're scoring 5 or 6 goals, you do what you got to do.
Yes, we didn't care.
You got to do. But it was, you know, for us, I'll be honest with you, for us is we liked watching Steve, you get frustrated and
yes.
Yeah, I know. I'm well aware.
These poor people who are on this flight at 5 a.m. out of Calgary or out of Philadelphia, wherever the heck we were, right? And these poor people, and we would just turn to the stewardess and say, just get the plane up and shut the lights off, and we'll be
I think it was Johnny. I think it was Calgary. Remember, we walked in and they were having a slam dunk contest, and they had the basketball hoop up, and I was the first one, and I jumped up and ripped the rim off the backboard, the first one, and slam dunk contest over. The contest is over.
Hey, what What was your favorite place to play on the road?
Calgary and Toronto. Toronto because I always lit it up there, but Calgary because everybody hated us.
Yeah, you know, it was.
Still do.
I agree with you. I agree with you. You know, those. You know, that I remember that one. I remember that one in Calgary. We ripped that basketball hoop off. You know, we played in the afternoon, right? And this poor guy, man, he's been promoting this event for weeks, right? And it's over. It's over. Like
this tournament is over.
I was going to ask a question, Johnny. What do you like traveling with Brian? But I think we just covered the game of
I'll
topics. I mean, you guys.
No, we had a great time traveling. We had a
like,
great time.
We, you know, both of us were in education, right? Both of us in education, and we figured out early. This was Brian. This was in his intelligence. We figured out early. Hey, we got to work Friday. We got to work. You know, we got to take the last flight out.
Got to work.
We got to teach all day.
Contract.
Right. You know, and so, you know, we take the last flight out of wherever, and, you know, we'd miss practice. It was beautiful. And, you know, we'd be ready for the next, you know, shoot around the next day. But
sometimes we didn't, though, Johnny. What did we do when we got early? When we got in early? Go to Timmy Ho's. Oh, guess we got to get some Timmy's. So we get some Timmy's. Get a donut. Come on, let's split a donut, Johnny. What's the rush?
You know, but it was listen, it, you know, we have, you know, and it was a great relationship, still is a good relationship. I'm glad we're doing it. It brings us together, and, you know, because we're apart a little bit, you know, with our lives and everything going on. But, you know, Brian, I had his toothbrush for him, and we bring that, and he'd, you know, take out the garbage bag that had his suit in it, and, you know, and we'd iron it out, and we'd be ready to go. But, you know, it was 6 a.m. game day, and I would be up, and, you know, I'd be yelling and screaming and getting everybody up in the hotel and ready to go. And, you know, one thing, Pete, you know, as his roommate, you know, Brian doesn't sleep with his eyes all the way closed, right? And so it took a while. Yeah, that was creepy for a while. But listen, outside of our, you know, there's similarities we have, and there's a lot of differences we have, you know, American to Canadian, you know, and how growing up, different things like that. But we're very similar in how competitive we are, right?
Totally.
And we're very similar in our work ethic, and we're very similar in the way that, you know, what we cared about was what our teammates thought of us, right? And it wasn't about, did we get 6 goals, did 7 goals, did I get 15 ground balls? It was, did I do my job, right? And did I do it to the best of my ability? And, you know, do my teammates trust me? And that we had in common. And that's why, you know, as roommates, you know, I loved it, right? And it was great.
So, Brian, I would like for you, in your best Johnny Gallant impression, winning the junior championships in Canada.
It's like, so it's a little rusty, you know. I haven't seen Johnny in a while. Maybe like, back we were playing Orangeville, and so I'm in Brampton, you know, where Wayne Gretzky's from, and so the Mentos Cup, you know, the Freshmaker Cup, we came up, we won 4 games to 3, I think it was, and I'm like, dude, nobody gives a shit, nobody cares. Like, you guys in your Mentos.
Nobody cares what a Mentos Cup is.
The Freshmaker. I don't even know what the hell that is.
And Johnny, I want you to talk a little bit about Brian's pregame warm-up musical process.
So
what about the garden?
So this is great. Like, you know, no one knows what the hell we're talking about, but it's you know,
nobody's watching the show anyway, Johnny, so it don't matter.
No one's watching us anyway. And so, yes, so it's what, you know, we'd go 7, or we go to shoot around, right? Shoot around. We go to Subway, right? Every day, right? For we go Subway for lunch, right? We go back and have a nap, and Brian would listen to he would listen to a Walkman, right, as he had, and he would sleep and his eyes half open.
Books on tape.
Stuff. And
Books on tape.
Books on tape. That's right. Yep. Books on tape. It was never music. It was always books on tape. And so yeah, at one point we started, what came out was the little iPods or whatever it was, right? All the iPods. And so all the guys, right? All the cool guys had them. And there's two teachers, right? We got no money. We're teachers, we got not working on Wall Street and doing all this other stuff. And so Brian gets the idea his iPod Mega. He called it iPod Mega. And
I forgot that. The Mega.
Walkman.
Mega.
It was a Walkman. Just that Walkman. And he would tape it to his arm, right?
With like athletic tape, electrician's tape.
Electrician's tape, right? Some duct tape. He had some duct tape once, right? It was a little blue collarish. And Richie Catton and Mikey Law and all those guys, Benny Prepchuck, and hey, is this what you guys use? Is this what you guys use? And the best was I think it was Madison Square Garden maybe, and he's listened to it and he fell off. Fell off the bench, right?
This is high enough.
Warm up, off and down. And listen, like you've seen Brian, he would be in Portland somewhere in the middle out. He scored 2 goals and he would turn and he'd start banging his chest. And he's like, I'm having a jammer. And you're like, but this was one moment when he fell off, he beat down, and you're like, I don't know if he's getting up. He might not get up. It's iPod Mega, a Walkman.
I remember he got rid of the Walkman and he had a Discman, and the disc was so big.
So big.
Electrician's tape on the arm.
This is such bullshit.
Not bullshit. All true.
But hey, that for our team, right? And he was a leader of our team, right? Because it was all these things we can look back at and laugh, and people, if they're watching, they're like, what the hell they're talking about? But he'd go score 6 goals, right? He'd go score 5 and 3, right? He'd get the overtime winner, right? In Arizona, all these places, and so it was that piece of how competitive he was and how much pride he took into playing box lacrosse the right way, right? Not playing it in an American way, but playing it in a very physical, offensive way, similar to what Canadians do, but brought enjoyment, to the locker room and to the way he played.
I'll tell you what, I have a photo in my office, and it's one of my favorite photos actually in the history of the National Lacrosse League. It's Brian diving across the crease. And this picture, to me, encapsulates your entire game, Brian, but the whole spirit of the Colorado Mammoth. And it was, you're diving across and your knees are bent and you're flying across the crease. And I know you've seen this picture. It's actually in Pepsi Center, and there's blood running down your knee, really into your socks, and you're like midair flying across. The ball is definitely going in. It was against actually Curtis Pallador in Calgary, and that's one of my favorite photos of all time from the Mammoth, and I cherish that photo because I really do think it captured the entire spirit of that team and what that franchise meant to me. Hey, everybody, podcast listeners for the TFL Podcast. This one's going way long. Great conversation. Love these guys. But part 1, we're going to put out first, and then come back and see us for part 2. Part 2, really funny. Lots of good stuff. We'll talk about Nick Carlson and Tom Ethington and, a little rap towards George McGeaney and Gavin Prout and a bunch of other guys. But love these guys. Love this podcast. Part 1, great. Part 2, even better.